All right, viewers, welcome to another edition of the Black Agenda Podcast. I'm your co-host, Devin along with my co-host, Adrian Guest, and we are continuing our HBCU Awareness Series. And today, we are happy to bring on the show from Fisk University, their president, Dr. Vann Newkirk Sr., and he's going to, talk to us about what's going on at Fisk University and kind of give us some background. And so we want to start, of course, with introducing Dr. Newkirk. So he is the 17th president of Fisk University, and before being president, Dr. Newkirk served as both the provost and interim president. And he has launched several highly successful new programs at Fisk, including bio, informatics, data science, and social justice programs. Dr. Newkirk's vision includes increasing enrollment, developing elite programs, expanding corporate partnerships, improving student outcomes, and of course, building a national awareness around Fisk, outstanding results. And so that's why we love to have him on the show. And the last thing is, in addition to his administrative accomplishments, Dr. Newkirk is also a published scholar. And so Dr. Newkirk has received his doctorate degree in history from Howard University, and he has been a proven leader in higher education for more than 20 years. And so, Dr. Newkirk, we're thankful and proud to have you on the show, and we appreciate you joining us.
We're glad to be here.
Thank you. And so just to kind of start our first segment, we always start kind of general. We want to talk about, the value and the history of our HBCUs. And so with you being a graduate, like we said, a graduate student of Howard University, our first question, we've asked every president this, what was your perception, going all the way back then as a young student when you were coming up, what was your perception of HBCUs and when you were considering your undergraduate and graduate degree? And did your family and your friends really, did they push you towards an HBCU? Kind of walk us through how you decided your higher education journey.
Well, HBCU was in my bloodline. My great-great-grandmother went to Barber Scotia in 1867. And so that was 1 year after the school, the year after the school was founded. And so my family had a history of going to HBCUs. My grandmother, my mom, they all went to Barber Scotia, and I finished at Barber Scotia. And so being at HBCU was a natural feel. It was one of those things that in my family that we just migrated and we just continued that whole process. My son, Vann Newkirk II, is a Morehouse graduate. My daughter is a Claflin graduate. And my youngest son is at North Carolina A&T. So we feel good about HBCU, right, the education that they actually produce.
No, that's awesome. It's good to see that because, Devin and I, we're from Mississippi, so we had, some HBCUs in Mississippi, but I was from a, predominantly white high school, and, I graduated third in my class, and my counselor told me that I needed to go to Mississippi State or an Ole Miss or something like that. Never really opened my eyes to an HBCU, and my family didn't have any history with HBCU, so that was a kind of a missing link. So it's great to see that lineage, and we know that that's how important it is to really continue the awareness for HBCUs. Our next question, we can tell from the website, it says that the first classes of Fisk convened on January 9th, 1866. This was right after the Civil War, where there was a tremendous need for institutions to educate former enslaved people and really help them out of that mentality and out of poverty. On the website of Fisk, it mentions how those first enslaved students had an extraordinary thirst for learning. So fast forward to today, we're in 2021, and you see that African-American educational attainment is only about 26% when you look at bachelor degrees, and only about 9% when you look at master's degrees. So our question, Dr. Newkirk, where is that extraordinary thirst for learning today, and how do we get more people in our community to value education, especially in education from an HBCU?
Well, I think our community still values education. They value it tremendously. I think what happens is that the institutions that many of us folk choose, those institutions don't actually nurture the students. I think what we do when a student comes to our institution, we try to bring out what's inside that student. Here's one thing that's really important that you need to know about Fisk. Of the classes that we graduated over the last 3 years, we did a survey, and we had about 105 students send that survey back. And of those students, the average income was $73,000 after 1 year. And what we learned was that we were graduating students not to get a degree, we were graduating students for particular jobs. And we were preparing them for those jobs. And that's what's important, letting people on the outside know that we're preparing you not just for a degree, but for a job, giving you those career skills that you need to actually progress. And so our graduates are going to places like Cravath, Swain and Moore, which is one of the largest law firms on Wall Street. They're going to Google. They're going to Amazon. We have relationships with Google. That there's been this controversy about Google, but we've had relationships with Google for 5 to 6 years. Mm-hmm. We're sending a lot of the Blacks who work at Google from Fisk. We're sending people to some of the biggest brokerage houses on Wall Street. And that's what's happening with our students. And they're getting the careers that they could not get without the education they get from Fisk. So we're nurturing our students and we're taking our students along a pathway. And that's one of the reasons that you look at our graduation rate. We graduate over 50% of our students in 4 years, and we do a good job at it. And the reason we're doing that is because our faculty, they take the time to nurture our students. They take the time to prepare our students with those interpersonal skills that are needed to get you past that hurdle. And I think that's what's allowing our students to stay at the university. When you look at our retention rate at Fisk, we retain about 75% of our students from point A to point B. That means from the coming to the university and graduating at the university. That is a very high retention rate. And the reason we do that, we don't have great facilities. The last new building we built on our campus was about 50 years ago. Mm-hmm. And we have 3 new buildings that will be created on our campus in the next year and a half. But because of what we do, the students come back to our university. They come back and they're enthusiastic about the university because it is not the buildings. It is not the community around the campus, but it is what we're putting in our students and instilling in our students that creates that enthusiasm to have them come back to the university.
No, and that's a common theme that we've heard, from every HBCU president and leader we've talked to, is that when you go to an HBCU, it is not just about, getting your student aid and, and trying to just treat you like a normal student. The people who are there, they care for you. They are embedded and invested in your success as a student. As you get out of college too, they want to see you succeed. And that nurturing part is where that differs. When you go to PWI, you don't necessarily have that type of environment where the teachers and the administrators and the secretaries, they all want to see you succeed. Whereas at an HBCU at all levels, everybody is invested in your education and they all want to see you succeed. So they're going to do what they need to help you to get there. And so hearing that, is that something that we've heard from every HBCU president, and something that people just were trying to get across, that look, when you go to these schools, there are people there who are kind of your advocates almost. They're there to make sure that you succeed, and not only at school, but also afterwards. Like you say with the survey, you see people are going on and doing amazing things and preparing them for careers, not necessarily just to graduate. And so that's really, really great to hear. And so that's going to do it for our first segment here. And we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to go into kind of the societal perception of HBCUs and how, schools like Fisk and others are dealing with that and kind of trying to battle back against some of the bias when it comes to perception. And so we're going to take our first break. And when we come back, we'll discuss that. Stick with us.
All right, viewers, let's get back into it here. Remember, we're joined today with Dr. Vann Newkirk Sr., President of Fisk University. Dr. Newkirk, our second segment has always been talking about societal perception of HBCUs, and we want to kind of continue in that fashion. Devin and I, we know the strength and value of the HBC community, and we know that they bring a lot to the table. However, the narrative is not really told to society. The narrative that's painted to high school students is totally different. Like I said, I graduated third in my class, and no one ever told me of going to a Howard or a Fisk or anything like that. They told me about predominantly white schools. So it just feels like society is still trying to, maybe put our community down by not recognizing HBCUs. But, Dr. Newkirk, you've talked about that nurturing environment at Fisk. So our first question is, how do we get that message across better? So as students are going through high school and getting ready to graduate, they have an HBCU on their radar, even if they may not have someone in their family who went to an HBCU or an advocate at their school.
Well, it's really important. When you brought that question up right here in Nashville, I've driven 3 miles from my campus and people have asked, where's Fisk University located? I've gone down to the mayor's office. I've had people who worked in the mayor's office. Even though we have 8 institutions in this town and 4 of them are HBCUs, they ask, where is Fisk University located? Or they ask, where's Meharry located? And we're next door to each other. And so it's really interesting when they ask that question. What we've started to do from Fisk University, we put our programs in the high schools. What they're finding is a difficult time here in Nashville having people to teach physics. We have an abundance of physics. That's a strength of our institution. So we're teaching physics in the high school to not just the high schools that are near our low performing high schools, to all the high schools in this town, we're teaching physics. We have one of the only Homeland Security programs in the South. We're teaching Homeland Security in Clarksville, Tennessee, which is the 4th largest school district in the state. We're teaching biology and English in some of the high schools. What we're trying to do now is to get our programs into the high schools so that people know about the quality of education that we have. And that's allowing us to actually turn that tide of where Fisk is located. Because now when I go to places in town, I've been here about 3 years, I hear people saying, well, I see that Fisk has this new program. It's in the newspaper and we want to know more about it. That wasn't something that we were getting all the time, because they often say, well, those programs for the people on the north side of Nashville. But now they're beginning to say these programs are for everyone in town. And it's interesting because we're changing that perception. We started a program in social justice, the only master's program in social justice in the South. And we have a lot of students who come into our program from Vanderbilt University, students who would never come to the university in the past because they hear about North Nashville and the dangers of North Nashville. They hear about all this stuff about Fisk. And it's interesting now that we got those folks that are coming in, developing new pipelines. And those pipelines are coming because we have a history of social justice on our campus. We've turned out so many leaders, John Hope Franklin, we've turned out W.B. Du Bois, we turned out Ida Wells, Nikki Giovanni. All of those are big names in social justice, John Lewis. And all of those are helping us to turn that tide, because we're actually taking our graduates who've done so much. We put them in front of the university name and push them out in the city. And that's allowing us to get people to know who we are and where we are.
Wow. And that's so great to hear that you really are boots on the ground trying to change the narrative every single day, every classroom, by getting involved in the community. And it's something that every HBCU is really kind of dealing with, which is just an awareness and like a marketing problem of people just not knowing where they are, what they specialize in. And so one of the things, we saw that, Fisk, with it is small, but it is the number 6 ranked HBCU in the country. And so our next question was just kind of, what has Fisk been able to do to achieve that high of a ranking while actually, while having, a pretty small student body? What have you guys been able to do to ensure that you're still achieving high ranks in like physics and being able to start all of these programs? I'm sure it's taken, consistent leadership. So we just want to get an insight into what you've been able to do to achieve those kind of marks.
Well, one of the things that's important for us is looking at what's needed in our country. And we do a lot of market research at Fisk University. We don't just start programs. We look at the markets and we look at what's selling and what's important to people and what's important for our graduates. That allows us to pick those programs that are going to be unique, those programs that have the ability to grow the university and to grow our students. That's one of the things that we're doing. The other thing that we're doing is that we're looking at the strengths that we have as a university. Fisk for a long time had some of the strongest programs in chemistry, biology, physics, mathematics. Those programs are programs that we promote. Those are programs that we use as we go out. We started all this data science, bioinformatics, because of the strengths that we have there. And that allows us to actually go to our students and develop curriculums around the whole university. All the curriculums are developed around these pathways. And these pathways are allowing us to strengthen and give our students what they need when they leave the university. And that's allowing us to stay strong and allowing us to actually grow our brand. Now, one of the things we are looking at right now, we want to grow our university. I mean, we are the best kept secret in North Nashville. And one of the things we plan to do over the next couple of years, we want to grow Fisk. We want Fisk to be one of the largest and fastest growing HBCUs. And we believe that we're on the right pathway to get there. So those new programs and the growth that we have a branch campus. Our first branch campus in Clarksville, Tennessee, is targeted to the military. And right now we've got a campus that we started about 3 semesters. And every semester we're doubling the enrollment in Clarksville, Tennessee. So we feel that we got a brand and people are interested in what we're selling.
No, I mean, I would say, yeah, that's really great to hear. And so, I really appreciate you giving us some insight into what you're doing, how you do that market research. We haven't heard that one before, as far as when you decide to start a new program. Because I mean, I'll be honest, I don't know what it goes into when a university decides, hey, we're going to start a new program. But it is interesting to see that you do have an eye forward as far as what the next, the jobs are going to be. They may not exist today, but they will exist at some point in the future. And so you want to be able to provide a route for a student to get to these jobs when they do become available. And so really interested in hearing that you're doing market research. And that just shows at Fisk, you are focused on trying to prepare your students for a career, not necessarily just, hey, we want to get you out the door in 4 years and we don't keep up with what happens, what happens after that. You really are preparing your students for jobs in the future, but a career also where they can, really advance and be able to, do great things, but also give back, hopefully, to the university. Um, and so we're going to take our next break. And when we come back, we'll kind of get into diversity and funding a little bit. We know funding has always been an issue at HBCUs. And so we're going to discuss that. So we're going to take our next break and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. So we are continuing our conversation with Dr. Vann Newkirk Sr. of Fisk University. He's the current interim president. And so we've talked a little bit about, the value and perception of HBCUs. And so we now want to talk about funding. Funding has been a huge problem over the past, decades. And so, when we talked to Dr. Lady Robertson down at FAMU, he said HBCUs are in kind of a catch-up mode because they have been so chronically underfunded, where they haven't been able to modernize their campus and build new buildings. And you told us earlier, y'all haven't built a new building on campus in like 50 years, but you're going to be building 3 new ones this year or in the next year. And so that's something we've heard across, all spectrums of the HBCU world, is that, funding has been an issue. And so we just wanted to ask you, we know that right now the focus is on trying to provide a student experience, that this next generation wants. And so how has Fisk been able to do, more, while funding kind of fluctuates, and what do you need from, the state governments and the federal government as far as proper funding support?
Well, it's important for us, as a private institution, our funding is what we can raise and what we get in tuition. And we've been very good at raising funds over the last few years. Last year, I think we raised $11 million, which was up from $6 million a year before. But it's important that we continue our process of getting our brand out into the community. What's happened for us for a long time, we did a great job with no resources, but we didn't get the word out in the community. And many of the people in the community, they just said, okay, well, this institution, they're getting money from their church, and so they didn't want to help us. And so what's happening now, and it's really important, we started diversifying who we approached. We started that about 4 years ago. We started selling our story, telling people what we're doing. We started this whole thing about getting in newspapers all across the nation. And what helped us a lot is that we actually started approaching some of the big businesses in this city, such as Dollar General. We got Dollar General to actually endow one of our professorships in business. And that's really important for us because that started a trend of giving to the university. And that trend, which increased, we almost doubled our giving in 1 year, but it's not enough. And so what we're looking at now is, how do we get to that next level? How do we get those donors like Bezos to actually send stuff to the university? So what we're trying to make sure is that we're in high-end publications and telling our story, that our story is going out, not just in Nashville, that it's going all across the nation. We've had stories in the Atlantic. We've had stories that we've published in the Hill. We put stories in USA Today, the Jubilee Singers. If you notice, there was a recent article about them in the USA Today. That's all a concerted effort by us to get our story out across the nation. Our Social Justice Center, which is named after John Lewis, we're getting information out about it and what it does across the nation. And that we can see that there's beginning to see some dividends coming to the university, that those dividends are coming in the form of enrollment and people who are questioning and asking how they can help. And that helped us a lot thus far. We've had some major gifts to come to the university this year. January, we got $500,000 from a foundation that was interested in the Social Justice Center. And we've got some additional gifts that are coming in. So I think for us, it's important that we get our story out, and that story is being told, and it's being told by us, and we're getting the correct story out. And our graduates are going out and promoting the university. That's allowing us to get into those places because we couldn't get it in the past. And I think that's important for us to grow our brand and to get the gifts that we need to run the university.
Dr. Newkirk, I don't, it's like you almost had our script ahead of time, because you almost teed me up real perfectly for our next question when you were talking about diversity and talking about the responsibility of making sure that you get the story out. Because, throughout Black History Month, we talked about that responsibility that we have to tell Black history and tell it in the correct way. And, you've been talking about how you at Fisk are doing that. And HBCUs, you've always been doing that. Before, students really didn't get a chance to expose themselves to how Black history was supposed to be taught. But then many students went to HBCUs and that narrative was corrected. But when you look at the students that are going to HBCUs, you're going to see 80+% are African American. And that's not a problem because what HBCUs are for. But when we talk about that responsibility to tell our narrative, one person told us that we can't leave it up to anybody else to tell that narrative correctly, because you look at American history and it's always been flawed. So with that in mind, how can HBCUs work harder to increase enrollment throughout all races, particularly in whites, so HBCUs can have a stronger role and responsibility in telling the value of the African American and African diaspora?
Well, I think historically we only recruited in African American schools and African American neighborhoods. What we're doing now, we have a large component of students on our campus who are Hispanic, and we're recruiting in Southern Cal, we're recruiting in Texas. We're telling our story in those areas, and we're letting those students know exactly what we can do for them as a university. We're also recruiting in areas like high schools in this town, some of the best high schools. We have our teachers teaching in those classrooms, and we're giving students certain credits. And those students, in many cases, are starting to look at Fisk. We looked at our application pool last year. We had about 6,000 applications to the university. And of that 6,000 applications, about 600 of those applications, 10%, which is not a lot, but they were of Caucasian or white. And that's almost triple what we had the year before. So it's important that we begin to look at those applications and we begin to convert some of those applications. Now, we're looking at those applications now as we are looking at different ways we can bring those students to the university. We've started an esports team. We have an esports arena. We've got new majors that are going to be unique to the university, unique to this area. And we feel that that's going to help us attract and to diversify further as a university, to give us those market niches that we need to get our enrollment to our targeted 1,500 students. We want to get 1,500. We don't want to be a large university, but we want to get to 1,500 students because we believe that's the optimal number that we can serve. And we believe that number is what we can do our best as a university and turn out the right kind of graduates. So we want those students to be of all races, all ethnicities, and all religious affiliations. And we are recruiting those students. We can see now that of our university, roughly 1,000 students, about 15% of those students are not African American, which that's not a large number, but think about it. A few years back at Fisk, we had about 95% African American. So we're beginning to see the diversity creep into our university, and we're glad of that because that's something that's important to us as a university. And that's important to me as an American and as an African American leader.
No, I completely agree. I think for me, and I may probably hoping for Devin too, but it's important for you all to have students of all races to tell the story of the African American race and to show that we bring value to society. Because if you go, to a Harvard or a Yale or something like that, or Mississippi State, they're not going to do the same job that you all are doing to really help with cultural competencies. Because that's what we're living, after 2020, we're seeing that we've got so much racial tension. And that's because people don't know the true history that other races went through. So it's so important that we see more HBCUs do what you're doing and diversifying their enrollment. With that being said, we're going to take our last little break here, viewers. When we come back, as always, we're going to wrap up our episode with our final message. So stick with us. We'll be right back. All right, viewers, let's get into it with our final message. Remember, we're joined today with Dr. Vann Newkirk Sr, President of Fisk University. As always, Dr. Newkirk, we always like to give our guests a chance to do a final message, which is just our way to kind of wrap up our episode, send it off to all of our fans, and kind of to set the stage for your final message. Thinking back on 2020, we know it was a tough year for everybody. Higher education has not been immune to some of the economic impacts and likely some of the enrollment numbers. I'm sure they probably have declined too, with some people maybe choosing to do other things. Funding has been a hot topic as Congress is getting ready to give funding to kind of energize various industries. HBCUs, we know they need to have a seat at the table when it comes to this funding because HBCUs are vital to the success of our nation. And as we've been talking about and telling that true story of our history, in order to build better sustainability for HBCUs for generations to come, HBCUs need dollars from major donors like you've talked about. And we spoke with other leaders who talked about alumni and even from giving from government. So, Dr. Newkirk, as a way to just end this episode and send it off, please describe to us the value proposition that Fisk and other HBCUs bring to society in an effort to bolster support and funding for your institution and others, whether someone is an alumni, Black or not.
Well, I think when you look at HBCUs as in a whole, we look at it like this. It's not how you get ahead, it's how you stay ahead. And what we do as a body is that we take students that many people don't want. We take those students, we take them from lumps of coal and turn them into diamonds. And we've been doing that for a long time. That's a common statement. But what we do today is that we're taking those students, we're putting those students into high-paying jobs. We're turning those students into value-added citizens. And for us as an institutional body collective, it's so important for us that we show America what our value to America is. And that as small institutions, most of us small institutions, that we're doing a Herculean task. Because if you look at the number of African Americans who actually take leadership roles in our country, the most are coming from HBCUs. Our vice president, and there are tons. John Lewis. We have three of our graduates we had three of our graduates in Congress. We have two now, and I think that's because of the leadership skills that we put into our graduates. And those leadership skills are important when we look at a time of economic downturn that we're having right now. For us as an institution, when we started talking about enrollment this past year, we had one of the highest enrollments as an institution. We didn't have any enrollment downturns. We had very few cases of COVID. We're a very small institution. And our enrollment is actually growing right now. We're projecting one of the highest enrollments at Fisk in the last 15 years. And that's because of the societal things that are going on in this country. We see more people turning to HBCUs, and we're offering the programs that people want and those value-added propositions that are going to get our students to the jobs they need. And I think that's what's important, and that's the message that we need to convey as we go into the 2021 and get further into this year and get further into how this country moves forward with a new administration. And we need to make sure that that message goes to the administration, not just from us going up periodically, but consistently through all of the channels that we have, to make sure that message becomes the message of the administration, and they help to carry some of the water that we need to carry.
Yeah, that's the message that needs to get out. And just, just my takeaway from the interview, great message there at the end, and just what you're focused on there at Fisk, and the success you're having and being able to attract new students, having, high enrollment, the highest enrollment you've had, and you said 15 years. Things are looking great at Fisk University, but we know that there are challenges. And so we wanted to use this platform to get the message out there, to help you with the marketing. But I think it shows that while you may be a small school, it's a mighty school, and that you are doing a great job in producing some very, very talented graduates. A couple you said were already in Congress and doing great things. And so that's the message we want to hear. And I love it too, how focused you all are on telling your story, getting it in newspapers and Vanity Fair and different places that you normally don't see stories about HBCUs. Fisk is right there saying, hey, no, we want to tell our story. We want people to know. We're literally getting in the classrooms, getting in front of students, Black, white, whomever, just to make sure that they know people, there are people at Fisk University who are extremely smart, who can educate you on things like physics to homeland security. You just don't hear about those things. And the fact that you all have taken it upon yourself to say, look, this is how we're going to build our university's branding. by being in front of the kids in the classroom. I love the mission, and I love the focus that you all have with doing that. So that's just my little takeaway there. I'm from this interview. Adrian, I'm sure you have thoughts too.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway is just that Fisk is hands-on. That's what I've gathered. Is that if you're looking for a place where you want to be nurtured, you want to grow, you want to be able to blossom and flourish, you need to have Fisk on your radar, viewers. You may think it's a small school, but one of the things, I knew from going throughout college is that sometimes big isn't always better, because it means you don't have the support you need. You don't have the teacher interaction that you need to be able to talk to your professors. But at Fisk, you can have that. So love it, Dr. Newkirk. We really, really appreciate you highlighting what you're doing, highlighting what the university is doing, and really helping more broadly to highlight what we as African Americans bring to the table. So again, viewers, we're continuing our conversation. We had Dr. Vann Newkirk Sr., president of Fisk University, the 17th president on our show today. Dr. Newkirk, thank you again for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having us, and we really enjoyed this time.
Awesome. Well, viewers, we're going to take our last break. And as always, Devin and I are going to come back, end it and wrap it up and give you some highlights of what's in store for next. So stick with us. We'll be right back. All right, viewers, let's go ahead and wrap our episode today up. A great conversation. Devin, I'm really glad that we decided to do this HBCU awareness series. Viewers, that Devin had the idea. I think I may have said it in some other episodes, but just wanted to highlight it again because it's, we're continuing to have some really, really great conversations. With that being said, the whole month of March, we're going to be having these conversations with presidents from HBCUs. We're going to be airing them on Tuesdays, airing them on Thursdays, 7:30 p.m. on Facebook and YouTube. So please be on the lookout for those. Got a great lineup for you from Howard to Tuskegee, FAMU, Grambling. If you haven't heard those interviews, go back and listen to them, watch them. Really, really great stuff there. As always, remember, we're bringing you the breaking news on Saturdays. We love doing that for you, weekly roundup style. You may see us on MSNBC or CNN one day or something like that. You never know. But join us on Saturdays, 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Going to be on Facebook and YouTube, bringing you the breaking news. As always, this is not a free venture. It costs money to do stuff like this. It costs money to want to grow and provide stuff for the community. So, Devin, tell them what they can do to help us out.
Yes. So this venture is not free. So from helping, to fund various moving pieces to make our podcast and live show happen, to helping us partner with other nonprofits, your dollars are very important to us. And not only does it show your appreciation for what we do, but it gives us the ability to go even further than we originally imagined. And so be sure to click on the link below there. It's you can go to either our website, which is blackagendapod.com, and just start off by giving us $1. That's all it takes. We don't need a whole lot of money. We just would appreciate your support. And we just, when you do that, it lets us do things like this with our HBCU awareness series. And so just check that out. Again, you can go to blackagendapod.com, click the donate button, give us a couple dollars, and we would absolutely appreciate it. And so, the next thing, again, when you give to us, it helps us recognize and be able to partner with other nonprofits. And so we started a campaign here where we're picking a charity each month to kind of highlight. And so our charity of the month for the month of March is going to be the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, which is a great nonprofit there that's helping to put a lot of African-American students into HBCUs. And so their mission is to ensure student success by promoting educational excellence and preparing the next generation of workforce talent through leadership and development. So a very, very great organization there that we're trying to put some attention towards. So not only donate to us, but maybe donate to the Thurgood Marshall College Fund to help them continue doing the amazing work that they are doing. And so again, you can go to our website and donate to us, but Adrian, we always tell the people to find us on social media, so you can let them know where they can find us.
Yeah, Devin. I mean, if you're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, hopefully you've been seeing our advertisements, you've been seeing our posts, but just in case, It's at Black Agenda Pod. Go there. Make sure you like us, follow us, share all the content you see. Whether it's a family member, friend, coworker, even somebody you may not know, tell them about the Black Agenda Podcast because we're doing great things. We're really trying to bring attention to stuff that you don't see on the major platforms like HBCU awareness. We have a website. It's blackagendapod.com, just like our hashtag. Just go there. Feel free to make sure you follow, share, like everything, donate again. Always going to plug that in there. But like I said, Black Agenda Pod, we need you to make sure you like, follow, and share. And as always, we want to make sure to thank our guest, Dr. Newkirk and Fisk University, for arranging our time together with Dr. Newkirk. Make sure to always shout them out. And of course, you, our fans who are listening, watching us, we thank you. We appreciate you. We're looking forward to coming back again to offer you more HBCU awareness, more news. So just be on the lookout, and we'll be back to catch you next time.